The first alarm didn't worry me. Cargo haulers get alarms the way old houses get creaks: constant, annoying, and usually harmless. Most of the time it was just the algae tanks shifting again. 40 tons of agricultural-grade nutrient slime wasn't exactly glamorous freight, but it paid well and didn't try to eat anyone. The second alarm was louder. The third one said missile lock, and suddenly my extremely boring day became statistically unlikely to continue. Unidentified cargo vessel. A voice crackled over the comms, distorted by cheap pirate encryption. Cut engines and prepare for boarding. I looked at my manifest. Algae? Who risks prison for algae? I keyed the mic. You guys lost? There's literally nothing on this ship worth stealing unless you're planning a very disappointing salad. A laser blast skimmed past my bow. Apparently, they were committed to the salad. I slammed the throttle forward, angling toward a nearby debris field. Cargo ships aren't fast, but we're stubborn, like shopping carts with engines. The hull rattled as another shot grazed us. Then my sensors pinged something else. A diplomatic cruiser. Or what used to be one. It drifted ahead of me, scarred with burn marks, one engine completely gone. Escape pods had deployed, except one that was tumbling slowly, its beacon flickering. The pirate ship adjusted course. Toward the pod. I should have run. Every sensible survival instinct told me to jump to faster than light, and file a very sympathetic report later. Pirates didn't like witnesses, and cargo pilots didn't win firefights. But humans have a very inconvenient reflex. If someone's in trouble, we go back. Fine, I muttered, spinning the ship around. Hope whoever you are appreciates heroic stupidity. I vented a cloud of algae slurry behind me, not tactical genius, but it confused the pirate targeting long enough for me to thread between them and the escape pod. Tractor beam locked. Got you. Unidentified hauler, the pirate snapped. Disengage immediately. I cut my engines instead. Space has this wonderful rule: things that are moving keep moving unless something stops them. The pirates overshot by a few kilometers before they could correct. Good enough. I latched the pod and punched the jump drive. Stars stretched into silver lines. When normal space snapped back, I finally breathed again. All right, I said, unstrapping. Let's see who I just ruined my insurance premiums for. The escape pod hatch hissed when I forced it open. Inside stood the smallest, angriest person I had ever seen. She couldn't have been more than 3 feet tall, wrapped in torn ceremonial robes that glimmered faintly like they had their own starlight woven in. Her skin held a soft bioluminescent shimmer, eyes bright and focused with the kind of intensity you usually only see in predators and tax auditors. She was also holding a plasma sidearm almost as long as her arm. She aimed it directly at my chest. Identify yourself, she ordered. Her translator rendered the words perfectly, but it couldn't smooth out the razor edge behind them. Name's Daniel Carter, I said slowly, raising my hands. Professional algae delivery specialist. Not a pirate. Her gaze flicked across my ship, the open hatch, the empty corridor behind me. You returned, she said. Yeah, that's usually how rescues work. A beat passed. Then she lowered the weapon. Acceptable. I waited for the shaking, the relief, maybe a thank you. Instead, she stepped forward with the rigid posture of someone used to being obeyed by entire governments. You engaged hostile forces to preserve my life, she said. Engaged is a generous word. I mostly panicked in their general direction. She ignored that. Then, without warning, she placed her glowing hand flat against the center of my chest. Her palm was warm. Warmer than human skin. She closed her eyes briefly, and the glow brightened. When she spoke again, her voice carried ceremonial weight. Before the witness of the void, I acknowledge you as my primary life partner by right of mortal defense. I blinked. I'm sorry, you're what? She opened her eyes. No humor. No hesitation. Bonded partner. Protector consort. Spousal equivalent under sovereign law. I laughed. She didn't. The laugh died quickly. Wait, I said. Hold on. That sounds dangerously like marriage. It is not dangerous, she replied. It is binding. Okay, see, on Earth we usually go to dinner first. Why? To determine compatibility. You demonstrated compatibility by not allowing me to die. I rubbed my face. That's not usually our primary metric. She studied me like I was a mildly confusing math problem. You may formally reject the bond, she said at last. Oh, good. However, she continued calmly, doing so without tribunal witnesses would constitute a public humiliation of my office. Your office? I am Ambassador Thria of the Celestine Concord. I waited for that to mean nothing. Then my ship computer chimed helpfully. Celestine Concord topped her galactic power. Trade influence across 14 systems. Military rating formidable. I swallowed. And humiliating you would be bad? It could be interpreted as a hostile cultural act. Hostile as in tariffs? She tilted her head. Hostile as in war. Silence filled the corridor. Somewhere, a coolant pipe dripped with comedic timing. Well, I said weakly. Congratulations on the marriage, I guess. She nodded once, apparently satisfied. Then she walked past me toward the cockpit with the confidence of someone inspecting newly acquired property. Our vessel is modest, she observed. Our vessel? Shared assets are efficient. I hurried after her. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. A calm signal chimed. Earth traffic control. A woman's face appeared on the screen. Cargo hauler Kestrel, please state the nature of your emergency jump. Thria stepped closer to the display, eyes narrowing. Is this female a rival claimant? She asked quietly. What? No. She's air traffic control. The officer blinked. Did your passenger just call me a rival? No one is anyone's rival, I said quickly. Thria folded her arms. She is observing you with interest. She is observing my flight violations. The officer muted herself, very obviously laughing. Thria turned back to me. You will inform others of our bond, she said. Clarity prevents challenges. Oh, I'm absolutely not telling people I got married during a pirate attack. She considered that. Then we shall formalize it properly. My stomach dropped. Formalize? Yes. I have studied human customs during transit. That was 20 minutes. I am efficient. She lifted her chin slightly. We will conduct a wedding. I opened my mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. And, she added with serene determination, I am particularly curious about the sacred stabilizing ritual you designate as the wedding night. I stared at her. Somewhere out in the endless dark, pirates were probably still looking for us. And somehow that no longer felt like my biggest problem. I had rescued a diplomat. Apparently, I had also proposed. By the time we reached Earth orbit, the story had already outrun us. Apparently, picking up a high-ranking alien ambassador after a pirate attack counted as noteworthy behavior, and news drones swarmed my ship before I even finished docking. Long metallic lenses hovered outside the viewport like curious insects. I groaned. Please tell me your people have a protocol for avoiding media. Yes, Thria said calmly from the co-pilot chair she had claimed somewhere around hour 2 of the flight. We ignore them until they become politically useful. That is, disturbingly practical. She didn't look at the drones. Didn't even acknowledge them. Her focus remained entirely on the tablet in her hands. What are you reading? I asked cautiously. Human Marital Archives. That sounds fake. It is a curated collection of your species' most influential romantic instructional films. My stomach sank. What films? She turned the screen toward me. A still frame showed 2 impossibly attractive humans kissing dramatically in the rain, while orchestral music practically screamed emotional instability. Oh no, I whispered. Yes, she said. This appears to be your culture's preferred bonding weather. That's not. We don't schedule precipitation. She scrolled with terrifying efficiency. I have also learned that prior to the ceremony, mates engage in ritualized disagreements to heighten emotional stakes. We call those arguments, and they're not mandatory. And that one partner must run through a transit terminal to prevent the other from departing. That is terrible time management. She paused, studying me carefully. You seem resistant to your own traditions. Because those are movies, Thria. They're exaggerated. Her expression didn't change. Your species exaggerates love? Constantly. She nodded once, filing that away like a tactical update. The moment we stepped off the ship, a small reception team waited, government liaison, 2 security officers, and a cluster of scientists trying very hard not to look like they were vibrating with curiosity. Thria walked past them without slowing. Not arrogance. Momentum. People instinctively moved aside. It was fascinating watching someone 3 feet tall command the space like a battleship. When one scientist leaned toward me and whispered, "What does she eat?" Thria stopped without turning. "I heard that," she said. The scientist froze. "I eat broadly," she continued, "including those who ask poorly timed questions." He made a noise somewhere between a cough and a surrender. We reached my apartment by evening, a very normal, very human space that suddenly felt inadequate for hosting someone who could accidentally start a trade war. She stood in the center of the living room, slowly turning in a circle. "This is where you conduct your life." "Yep. It is compact. That's a polite word for it." She approached the couch, pressed a hand into the cushion, then sat. Her feet didn't reach the floor. For the first time since I met her, she looked small. Not commanding. Just small. Then she straightened abruptly. "We must begin preparations." "For what?" She looked at me like I'd forgotten gravity. "Our wedding." I rubbed my temples. "You know humans usually date first." "You continue to say this." "Define date." "It's when 2 people spend time together to see if they actually like each other." She considered that. "We survived combat together." "That is not the same as sharing appetizers." The next morning, she discovered bakeries. Specifically, cake tasting. I tried explaining it was supposed to be fun, a light-hearted tradition where couples sampled flavors. Thria arrived with a handheld scanner. The baker blinked as she swept the device over a chocolatier. "Any toxins will be detected," she announced. "There are no toxins," the baker said weakly. "Redundancy saves lives." She requested 5 identical cakes. For triangulated analysis. 10 minutes later she was issuing notes. "The vanilla is structurally honest. The strawberry is attempting deception. The lemon shows promise but lacks conviction." I leaned toward the baker. "I am so sorry." But halfway through, I noticed something. Between scans, her expression softened. She took slower bites. Almost careful ones. "You've never had cake before, have you?" I said quietly. She hesitated. "Diplomatic heirs are not encouraged to form attachments to transient pleasures." "That is the saddest sentence I've heard all week." She looked down at the fork in her hand. "Celebrations are inefficient." "Well," I said, nudging another slice toward her, "today you're inefficient." She took the bite. A faint glow warmed along her cheekbones. "Acceptable inefficiency," she admitted. The bouquet conversation went worse. "So you throw flowers?" she repeated. "Yeah. Whoever catches them is supposedly next to get married." She went very still. "This is a challenge." "It is not a challenge. It is a public declaration of succession. It is floristry." Later that afternoon I found her in the hallway practicing throws with a rolled-up magazine. One hit the wall hard enough to leave a dent. "You're going to start an international incident with hydrangeas," I warned. "Precision improves with repetition." The bachelor party explanation nearly killed me. "It is a premarital endurance trial," she concluded. "No. It tests loyalty among allies." "Also no. Yet somehow that night I found myself in a rented gym surrounded by 3 retired Marines she had invited after reading about them online. The obstacle course included rope climbs, balance beams, and something she labeled symbolic adversity. Halfway through, I collapsed onto a mat. She stood above me, hands clasped behind her back. "You persist despite obvious physical distress," she observed approvingly. "That is called being too embarrassed to quit. An admirable human trait." When we finally returned home, exhaustion replaced adrenaline. The apartment was quiet. City lights spilled through the windows. Thryah stood there for a long moment, watching the traffic far below. Then, softly, "Are you displeased by the bond?" The question caught me off guard. "You've been cooperative," she continued. "But humans mask discomfort with humor." "I wish accuracy." I leaned against the wall. "It's not that I'm displeased. It's just fast. Yesterday I was single. Today I apparently have a galactic spouse and a cake security detail." She absorbed that. Her glow dimmed slightly. "In my culture, hesitation often precedes rejection. That's not what this is." Silence stretched. "For what it is worth," she said, almost carefully, "you have shown me more leisure in 2 days than most show in a lifetime." Something tugged unexpectedly in my chest. Somewhere between the pirate attack and the tactical cake inspections, she had stopped feeling like a diplomatic complication. She felt like someone who had never been allowed softness. I stepped closer. "For the record," I said, "I don't hate this. It's insane. But I don't hate it." Her eyes searched my face, as if verifying structural integrity. "Good," she said quietly. Then, after a pause, "You are mine, after all." I should have corrected the wording. Instead, I found myself smiling. And that was the moment I realized something slightly terrifying. I wasn't just adjusting to the bond anymore. I was starting to like it. The first suitor arrived in a ship longer than my entire apartment building. It slid into orbit like it owned the concept of gravity, polished hull reflecting sunlight in arrogant streaks. The diplomatic alert hit every network within minutes. "Envoy Tauren of the Voss Combine requests an audience with Ambassador Thryah regarding potential realignment of bonded status." I stared at the message twice. "Realignment?" I repeated. "That sounds like a corporate merger." Thryah didn't even look up from her tea. She'd developed a fondness for it after deciding coffee was chemically aggressive. "It is a polite way of asking whether I would prefer a more politically advantageous partner." "More advantageous than an algae pilot?" She finally glanced at me, eyes steady. "Political advantage rarely correlates with personal preference." Tauren arrived wearing enough ceremonial metal to qualify as a structural hazard. He was tall, silver-skinned, and smiling the way predators probably smiled right before inventing taxes. He bowed slightly toward Thryah. "Ambassador, news of your unexpected bond has traveled far. Many hope it is merely provisional." "It is not," she said. His gaze shifted to me. "And this is the human. This is my primary partner," she corrected calmly. Tauren circled once, openly evaluating me. "Fragile frame. Limited natural weaponry. Economically modest." "Hey," I muttered. He continued as if I were an appliance. "The Combine could offer fleets. Territory. Genetic elevation. I am not upgrading a starship," Thryah replied. He leaned closer to her. "Surely you recognize the inefficiency of tying your lineage to randomness." For the first time, her glow sharpened, not brighter, but colder. "Envoy," she said evenly, "in the last hour I have identified 17 trade dependencies your people rely upon from Concord space." His smile thinned. "I would be reluctant," she continued, "to reevaluate those agreements over a matter already settled." Tauren straightened. "Understood." He left 10 minutes later. I exhaled. "Do all your conversations sound like veiled economic threats?" "Only the friendly ones." The next few days brought more visitors. A merchant prince who tried complimenting her by insulting me. A war hero who described himself as statistically superior breeding material. One particularly brave diplomat attempted flirting with me directly, perhaps hoping to provoke her into dissolving the bond. Thria stepped between us before I could even process what was happening. "You are standing too near," she informed him. "I meant no offense. You are currently offense-shaped." He retreated immediately. Later that night, as we walked home beneath the warm glow of street lamps, I nudged her shoulder lightly. "You know, you don't have to threaten international stability every time someone talks to me." "I do not threaten," she said. "You absolutely threaten. I clarify consequences." I laughed, but the sound faded when I noticed two unmarked drones pacing us overhead. "Those yours?" I asked. "No." My instincts tightened. Back at the apartment, a secure alert flashed across her wrist display. "Pirate insignia. A recovered transmission. They are searching nearby systems," she said. "For you?" "For us," she corrected. I started checking the window locks automatically. "You don't look surprised," she observed. "Cargo pilots learn to expect trouble. Comes with hauling things nobody wants until suddenly they do." She watched me for a long moment. "You are preparing defensive measures. That's what partners do." A faint pause. Then she stepped closer. "Incorrect." I blinked. "Primary partners preserve each other," she said. "You will not assume singular risk." She disappeared into the spare room and returned dragging a compact case I had never seen before. Inside lay technology that definitely violated several import regulations. "You brought weapons into my apartment?" "I brought precautions." Over the next hour, we set up enough security to make the place safer than most embassies. And somewhere between calibrating sensors and arguing about turret placement, which I absolutely lost, something shifted. We weren't protector and protected anymore. We were a unit. Still, the doubt crept in later. She stood on the balcony watching the city, glow softened by the neon reflections below. From behind, she looked almost fragile. "You know," I said carefully, "half the galaxy seems to think you could do better than me." She didn't turn. "Do you?" The question hit harder than I expected. "I mean, you're important. Powerful. I deliver pond scum for a living. Agricultural nutrient biomass." She corrected automatically. "Very glamorous biomass." Silence stretched. Then she spoke, quieter than I'd ever heard her. "Most do not see me as a person." I stepped closer. "They see rank, utility, influence. When they approach, it is always for the Concord, never for Thria." She rested her small hands on the railing. "You did not know my title when you returned for the escape pod." "I knew someone needed help." "Exactly." Something in her voice wavered, not weakness, just honesty without armor. "So when you speak of others being better, understand this: many are more strategic. None were more kind." My throat tightened unexpectedly. "I didn't choose the bond," I admitted. "But I'm choosing you now." She turned then, eyes luminous. For a second neither of us spoke. Then she reached out and slipped her hand into mine. Her fingers were warm, small, steady. "On my world," she said softly, "mutual choosing is considered the highest form of stability." We stood there watching traffic weave through the night, the quiet surprisingly comfortable. The days before the wedding slowed. Not awkward. Just gentle. She discovered street food and declared it recklessly flavorful. We watched old Earth sunsets painted in impossible oranges. Once, during a movie, she leaned against my arm without seeming to realize it, and didn't move when she did. It felt less like an arrangement, more like gravity. The night before the ceremony arrived almost unnoticed. She sat cross-legged on the couch, reviewing notes on her tablet with intense concentration. "You're studying again?" I asked. "I prefer preparedness." "For what?" She hesitated, then set the tablet aside. "There is something I wish to understand with precision." I waited. "This wedding night," she said carefully, Your film suggests it is pivotal. It's not a test, I said gently. Then what is it? I thought about it, about all the ridiculous traditions, the expectations, the myths. Finally I shrugged. It's just the moment two people stop being alone. She absorbed that slowly. Her glow warmed, spreading faint light across the room. Then, she whispered, almost to herself, I anticipate it, intensely. And for the first time since this chaos began, I realized I wasn't nervous about the pirates. Or the diplomats. Or the absurd interstellar attention. I was nervous about how much I wanted this to be real. The morning of the wedding arrived with a kind of chaotic perfection only Earth could provide. Birds sang, traffic honked, and somewhere a neighbor's dog discovered the sheer joy of barking at zero consequence. I stared at the reflection in the mirror, wondering if I'd ever been this nervous over clothing before. The suit felt constricting in new and unhelpful ways, but nothing compared to the small figure perched on the edge of the dresser, meticulously checking her ceremonial robes. She turned toward me, eyes narrowing slightly. You appear tense. Are your hormones malfunctioning? No, I said quickly. Just human anticipation. She tilted her head, considering. Anticipation is inefficient. Prepare for maximum clarity of purpose. I exhaled, realizing that nothing about this day would be normal. The venue, a modest municipal hall, had been transformed overnight. Flowers lined every wall, lights twinkled in patterns she deemed aesthetic for optimal bonding, and a table displayed the kind of cake that could double as a small fortification. Guests arrived in a steady stream, human friends, galactic diplomats, curious journalists, and several uniformed officials whose expressions suggested that they were here out of necessity rather than desire. Thria moved among them like a small general inspecting her troops. Every greeting carried an unspoken declaration, approached cautiously. When it came time for the vows, she produced a tablet and began reading aloud. These words are precise. They leave no room for ambiguity. I listened as she outlined obligations, permissions, and cooperative responsibilities with the meticulousness of someone filing interstellar legal documents. Somewhere in the middle, she added, and the human agrees to refrain from reckless endangerment unless tactically justified. I blinked. That's adorable? Her gaze pierced me. Adorable is not an assessment metric. The officiant cleared their throat. You may now exchange rings. Thria held out a tiny hand, and I placed the band over her slender finger. She inspected it for structural integrity. Satisfied, she raised it and glowed faintly, a soft light like moonlight on water. Then came the bouquet toss. She picked up the flowers, eyeing the gathered audience as if assessing a battlefield. When she threw them, they shot across the room like guided missiles, hitting a drone and sending it spinning into the wall. Guests yelped. Children ducked. One overly eager journalist tried to retrieve the flowers and got a polite warning about structural damage. Thria nodded to herself. Efficiency achieved. The ceremony continued. I noticed diplomats shifting uncomfortably, realizing that witnessing a human-alien wedding was far more unpredictable than any trade negotiation. Small gestures, the gentle intertwining of hands, a shared glance, carried weight beyond all laws or customs. Somehow, amid the absurdity, it felt real. Then the alarm sounded. Not a fake one. Not a ceremonial one. A real one. Pirates. Apparently, someone had not forgiven me for rescuing Thria. She didn't panic. She drew a small weapon from beneath her robes. Stand back, she instructed calmly. We will neutralize the threat efficiently. I watched, heart thundering, as she moved with tiny, precise steps, firing calculated bursts that disabled the incoming ship's engines and shields without harming the civilians below. The humans beside me gawked. The diplomats gawked. I think one of the photographers fainted. When the smoke cleared, she turned toward me, glowing faintly from exertion. Primary partner, she said, voice steady. You are unharmed. Yes, I said, chest heaving. Thanks for that. She considered. You survived minimal training exercises. Efficient species. I laughed shakily. You're welcome, my guests. Finally, the hall settled. The pirates were gone, neutralized without casualties. We returned to our celebration, which somehow felt both absurd and earned. Guests clapped politely, though a few of them were secretly checking to see if another attack would happen. Thria leaned on my arm as we approached the private room designated for the wedding night. She looked up at me with an intensity one had grown used to, one that now carried warmth and anticipation. I have prepared protocols, she said softly, holding a tiny checklist. Temperature, atmosphere, and a schedule of emotional calibrations. I chuckled, taking her hand. I don't need protocols. I just want you here. Her glow softened, a gentle pulse that made the shadows of the room dance. Then we may proceed without additional measures, she whispered. We sat together, hands intertwined. No dramatic movie sequences, no ritual tests, no interference from diplomats or pirates. Just quiet. A soft understanding. A bond that had survived chaos, absurdity, and interstellar attention. And as I looked at her, tiny, fierce, glowing, impossibly determined, I realized the truth of what humans often forget. The galaxy could complicate everything, alien laws could threaten sanity, and pirates could appear out of nowhere. But some things were simple. Choice. Trust. Connection. I'm glad you chose me, I said quietly. I had no alternative, she replied, then smiled faintly. And yet I would do so again. Outside, the world spun, indifferent and beautiful. Inside, we simply existed together, for the first time free from threats, tests, and expectations. Even if she still threatened anyone who glanced at me too long. Even if she still insisted on running every decision through her tiny, efficient brain. Even if the galaxy still seemed utterly ridiculous. I realized, as we sat there quietly, that I wouldn't have had it any other way. Some bonds are forged in fire and absurdity, laughter and fear, chaos and calm. Ours had survived all of it. And in the end, that was enough. She leaned closer, resting her head on my shoulder. I wrapped an arm around her, careful not to squash her. The room was warm, the city lights flickered outside, and somewhere, in a small corner of the galaxy, everything felt right. The universe could keep its politics, its pirates, its absurdity. We had each other. And for once, that was more than enough.